Welcome. I'm Shannon Bahari, Senior Editor of Feedinfo News Service, coming to you from home base in Toulouse, France, and I'm joined by our Editor-in-Chief, Simon Duke. Hi, Simon.
Hello, Shannon, and hello to everyone who's listening to this video.
So the COVID-19 outbreak has, of course, been the main news story. Although this is primarily a human pathogen, it's obviously had implications for the animal nutrition market as well. Simon, could you take us through those?
Of course, thank you, Shannon. I've been working at Feedinfo close to 18 years now, and I guess I can say I've never seen a situation as impactful as COVID has been. At Feedinfo over the years, of course, we have always been monitoring changes and developments and disruptions to supply and demand in the markets, in the feed additive markets, and this one, COVID. It's fair to say that no one saw it coming, the industry included. We didn't see how rapidly coronavirus would impact us and our industry and actually take a significant place in our everyday lives and dictate our lives to some extent. So we have been reactive like the industry has in these challenging times. COVID became a very hot topic, I'd say, a month ago, as soon as we saw the situation getting out of control in China, and we saw the first big outbreaks in Europe, and specifically Italy, where there are more deaths today in Italy than in China. So in recent weeks, the big question in our industry has been, what about the continuity of animal nutrition plants across the globe? And that question is being asked even though our industry has a special status. It's critical and it's crucial to the feed and food supply chain. So over the past week or so, we've been collecting comments from the industry worldwide. What started off as an overview of the Italian animal nutrition sector and how that sector was coping turned into a pan-European overview, and then more recently into a worldwide overview, as we've been collecting more and more comments from places in North America, in South America, and we've been recollecting a lot of company comments who've actually approached us directly to be part of this coverage, and for that we are very thankful.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what these companies are saying?
Yes, I'd say we've had about 70 so companies who've shared comment, who've been really playing ball with us in these difficult times. To sum things up, first of all, I have to say that the plants are operational, supply is insured, and employees are safe. The companies do remain, however, very concerned about future developments as the COVID virus spreads and country lockdowns are put in place. Now, if we break down what animal nutrition companies have told us about their business continuity plans today, I think we could divide the statements into three types of categories. First, people, followed by production and supply, and in that order. All companies involved have told us that they are monitoring the situation, of course, very closely, and they have taken many actions to protect their employees. Traveling, for instance, has been reduced to an absolute minimum, and the companies follow country-specific restrictions on entry and quarantine. Like us, people are working from home, and those who have to go to the plant to work are, of course, ultra cautious. So production sites and offices around the world are following very closely the local regulations. Companies have proactively reduced the impact the global supply chain disruptions may have on customers. Customer service and sales teams are telling us that they are well aware of the challenges and have been encouraged to communicate with their customers and make sure they are up to speed with the developments of the business and the industry in general. So every company concerned continues to monitor and evaluate the situation. In a nutshell, I would say that there are no major disturbances to the internal supply chains and ability to produce. But the question is, how long will that last?
Indeed. Is it possible to zoom in on what we're seeing in specific markets?
Of course. Now our coverage has become global in recent weeks, and I'd like to start off with a few developments we've seen in Malaysia, for instance, where the 2020 Malaysia Movement Control Order, MMCO, was implemented last week on March the 18th, to be precise. That order has led to the closure of various industries, and that will be the case until the 31st of March and possibly beyond. Only manufacturers of critical items such as face masks and hand sanitizers are, of course, allowed to continue their operations during the shutdown, but of course with a minimal number of workers and reduced work shifts. Now, it is understood that Malaysian suppliers of feed and feed additives are part of this list of critical manufacturing sectors under this animal feed category. In China, where the outbreak began, the COVID news is more encouraging. We are seeing that 80 to 90% of Chinese feed additive companies are up and running again, and that export orders out of China are almost back to normal. Recently, for example, Brother Enterprises, a vitamin manufacturer, told us that they were officially allowed to resume production of vitamin B1 in the Jiangsu province. Having said that, Evonik's force majeure for threonine in China that was declared on March the 11th is still in place. Last week, though, Evonik and their Chinese contract manufacturer Fufeng Group told Feedinfo that the Fufeng production facility, which was affected by the COVID-19 outbreak in February, saw difficulties to catch up production supply of Evonik's threonine, and therefore shipments were also affected. But as of today, the production facilities are operating normally again, but the general logistics situation is gradually recovering, and it will take time. Meanwhile, in Russia, various feed additive importers have raised concerns about the strong fluctuations seen for prices for amino acids and vitamins. Some say that the coronavirus impacted almost all the feed vitamins, regardless of where they are produced. A Russian feed additive importer even told us that prices for most vitamins jumped by 30% in recent weeks. As for amino acids, coronavirus impacted primarily threonine in Russia, since it's almost fully coming out of China. The price fluctuations of the market really started in February, and all supplies that are coming in now are coming with a delay. And it may very well be the case that in April the situation could worsen and the delays get longer. Some Russian companies today are receiving feed additives that were shipped out of China even before the lockdown. So that's January 2020, which is a big delay. And finally, work in progress. Our correspondents in South America are investigating what the consequences of the country lockdowns are having over there. And we will soon have an article on that topic on Feedinfo detailing the findings. But so far, the vibe we have is positive, and the animal nutrition sector over there is working without any disruption.
Is it possible to say overall, how do you think the industry is coping with the COVID-19 situation compared to other sectors which might also be trading globally?
Business continuity plans are in full swing. The business is as normal. That's the general vibe we have. But what is worrying the European industry right now at the moment are the possible disruptions in the feed supply chain once product has been shipped away from the manufacturing facilities. And we've seen that being particularly the case in the last few days. Now, inland transport can be a problem in terms of timely availability of raw materials or end product. And measures put in place by various countries have slowed down and sometimes paralyzed transport, causing delays, of course. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commissioner, on Monday pointed out that last weekend, some crossing points in Europe had more than 40 kilometers of queues, and that translates into a waiting time of up to 18 hours. On Monday, she issued a statement. This has to stop. And she urged the European member countries to unblock their borders and allow freight vehicles to cross from one country to another within 15 minutes. It's interesting because road transport accounts for about 75% of freight shipments within the EU. EU countries have also been asked to designate major crossing points as green lane border crossings, and this also includes rail, waterway, sea, and air transport. Now, such easing of restrictions and controls on feed products will be felt immediately by the industry, especially in terms of lead times, and that will improve availability of trucks and containers. And a quick word on sea freight. Some companies are, however, seeing reduced volumes of containers available, their lead times increasing, and there's also a risk of further slowdown as personnel in the ports and container terminals are, of course, being personally impacted by the virus.
Worrying to think about. And looking at things on a longer term, do you think that COVID will change the way our industry communicates?
Very tough to tell right now. But if I look back at my experience over these past few weeks, and I look at the companies I've been dealing with, I mean, they are obviously, like us, struggling with this new world order and preparing all sorts of business continuity plans. Our contacts in this industry are, just like us, isolated from their teams, from their co-workers. They're working at home. And in these very special circumstances, I've rarely seen such solidarity and willingness to communicate, especially on a situation, I mean, this industry didn't see coming, and which never ceases to evolve, which makes comment or commitment or a commitment to helping out that more trickier when normally a company would go and check with its legal team before communicating. We're not seeing that as much. So that's really promising, and it shows that our industry can get together when the times are tough and share their positive messages and demonstrate transparency and a desire to share information with the rest of the market. And for me, in some ways, we've entered a new cycle. And this bodes, of course, very well for life after COVID-19, when we'll be able to regroup at events and conferences and resume the discussions on sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions, animal welfare, amongst other topics, and of course, the importance and availability of safe and healthy food. So industry opinions today do matter. I encourage them a lot. And companies without specialist communication teams may need to reconsider that.
We'd like to wrap up with a brief word from our analysts team. Feedinfo is, of course, known for its probing analysis of the vitamins and amino acids market. And we have a roundup from Martijn de Kock, a lead analyst, who says, after a short period of relatively stable prices in March 2020, although around 30 to 40% higher than those of January 2020, the market is now starting to get more active and volatile again for several amino acids and vitamins. Several feed additive manufacturers and other feed industry sources in China have confirmed that production of premix, compound feed, and amino acids and vitamins is back to a production level of 80 to 90% compared to the levels of late 2019. At the same time, there are also several reports in China of production backlogs, low stock levels, and a shortage of key raw materials. Manufacturers are playing catch-up to be able to supply both the Chinese domestic market and the export markets, and this is putting pressure on the spot price of various feed additives and on seaport capacity. There is still a decent portion of amino acids and vitamins being produced outside of China, mainly in Europe, the US, some Asian countries, and Latin America. As COVID-19 is spreading further as we speak in these regions, end users of feed additives are starting to review their positions once more, as they're uncertain about the continuity of production and logistics in these regions for Q2 and Q3. Depending on the region, we see different buying behavior. For example, in Europe, end users are well contracted for Q2, and some even into Q3 of 2020. So there's less significant activity seen right now. We note that the situation in the US is similar to that of Europe, but for example, China is much more of a spot market.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Shannon. That's a real good overview of what's going on right now in the amino acids and vitamins market. But what can you disclose about moving forward, about the future? Is there anything you can say at this point?
Well, we can say a bit. Based on all of these factors, we're starting to see another round of price increase, specifically due to the lack of certain raw materials like gelatin or a general production backlog in China. Vitamins like vitamin A or D3, as well as the amino acid D-L-methionine, are increasing in price on the domestic Chinese market. Meanwhile, the availability of several amino acids in Malaysia and Indonesia is reduced due to general market conditions around COVID-19, which has reduced the availability of end product and raw materials and caused logistical challenges. Production and truck or train transport in Europe and the US is still said to be relatively normal, although concern about how this situation could develop is causing uncertainty on all sides. But at the same time, both Europe and the US are facing delays in shipment out of China, which is leading to gaps in the supply chain. So we see the spot market becoming more active and prices firming for some additives, including threonine, vitamin A, and vitamin D3. So overall, we'd say that while the market is stable to firm right now in most cases, depending on the region, there is an expectation based on today's information that for several feed additives, further price increases in Q2 are coming.
Okay, that's really a comprehensive overview. Thank you for that, Shannon. And I'd like to extend that thank you to Martijn for having compiled that report for us. On my behalf, a big thank you to everyone who viewed this video, who tuned in. It's great to have your support.
And thank you, Simon. And we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.